So here I've got everything I need to make myself another bottle of honey cider. Starting from the left, I have a stopper that is the correct size for the treetop bottles. I have an aerator in its cap that will go on and through the stopper in the end. I have a 2-cup measuring cup that I use to measure out 2 cups of cider that then will be poured into the jug that is right next to the treetop cider that I use for keeping any of the extra cider or from when I make cider, and also so I can add some cider back in. And I have a jug of honey there that I'm using to put into it, along with a packet of S-04 yeast. I'll start by taking out 2 cups of cider and pouring that into the jug next to it, and then I will take out another cup of the treetop cider and then put in a cup of honey into that before warming it in the microwave to get the honey to go into the bottle easier. Alright, so now I've taken out 2 cups of the cider and poured it into my jug there with funnel on it. And I poured out 1 more cup of cider into my measuring cup and put 1 cup of honey into the measuring cup. Now into the microwave what on my microwave is a beverage setting to make for hot teas. And I usually do the beverage for 1 cup because it usually gets it warm enough to help with activating the yeast. All right. Heating the honey and cider is not required when doing the honey because the honey does pour fairly well on its own. But I found it does get more of the honey out of the container out of the 2-cup measuring cup a lot better than if I don't put the honey in the microwave for a little bit. Now for when I'm using brown sugar or white sugar, I found I definitely need to make sure that I get the sugar and the cider heated up a little bit, and it makes the sugars pour much easier into the containers. Otherwise, pouring straight sugar in through the funnel, it seems to clog up and becomes very hard to get the sugars to go through, whereas taking a little bit of the cider, heating it up a little bit does make it much more of a syrup that pours in fairly quickly. So now that I've got my honey and my cider up to the level I want it in the jug, I'm going to shake the jug quite a bit to make sure the honey is distributed all throughout the cider. Alright, so now my cider has been nicely shaken. It has a nice head of foam on it that I'm going to have to let calm down before I can put any type of yeast into it. Holding on to the bottom, it's not very warm at all right now, so I'm not worried about putting the yeast in it if it's too warm. If touching the bottle I realize that it's a little warm, that usually means I need to let it cool down, because the yeast really like it between 70 and 80 degrees, especially to get started. Otherwise it does take them a few more days to really get going. Alright, as you can see, there's still foam on top of the treetop after a couple hours of sitting here, and when I've been watching it, I've seen more and more bubbles appear. So as I found with the other treetops, it seems to start bubbling on its own with or without any additional yeast. So you can see the other two back there, only a couple days and their yeast is really going wild. I'm using the S-04 yeast. So this one, let's see if I can get it in focus. So SafAle S-04. It's about $3.50 to $4 a packet, depending on where I get it from. So I usually end up using between a half a tablespoon to or half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of yeast, depending on how many I'm making. Most of the time I try to make 4 gallons at a time so I can use up the whole packet, but I had split this up between 3 or 4 batches, and so I still had some in the fridge and put a teaspoon into this jar. Now I'll shake it up, get it all nice and mixed up, and put the aerator on and add my vodka to the aerator. Alright, so I have the bottle nicely shook, and I have a stopper in it, and I have an airlock in it, and I've put my vodka in it, so it's all ready to go. There's only one last thing that needs to be done, and that is marking the date on the bottle. So I want to do that it was 2/7, And then I'm going to mark that it was made with honey. I don't know how well you guys can see that, but this is how I've been marking my bottles so far. We'll see if I end up needing to change that to make it easier to keep track of, especially with racking, because I've seen a few videos where the same person uses tape and they go between the bottles so they can keep track of when it was created, when it was racked, and when it was second racked. Because as I'm finding with some of these, that having a couple racks to be able to get rid of the sediment definitely helps. So we'll see where this goes and see where it's at after a couple days and now at a week. All right, bye.